For the first time in 10 years, we're getting a new edition of D&D. Well, kinda. Wizards maintains that the 2024 core rulebooks are not a new edition, but just 5th edition reimagined. But since there are some major changes to the game mechanics, a lot of people are confused about what exactly this new edition that's not a new edition means for the way we play. So when I got an email that said, hey, do you want to interview Jeremy Crawford about the new books? I was like, yeah, actually I do have some questions. Jeremy Crawford is the lead rules designer for D&D. We've actually already met when he killed me at D&D in a Castle. My character, I mean, he didn't kill me. And I'd like to see him try. I've been seeing a lot of people asking, why should I switch to the new rulebooks? And to be honest, I've been asking myself that too. I mean, I love 5e, that's why I play it. Yeah, it has flaws, every game does, but so will the 2024 version. And those flaws will be new and different, and we'll need to figure out new, different ways to fix them. Also, I have a ton of content for 5th edition. Not just official books, but also third party and homebrew. I don't want to give all that up, especially since there are tons of character options that haven't been rewritten for 2024 D&D yet. I've even seen people saying that by making a new rulebook that isn't a complete new edition, Wizards is just doing some kind of cash grab, making tweaks to a system that already works and then charging new edition prices for it so they can sell a bunch of new books. So I'm gonna ask Jeremy Crawford about all this stuff. Why should anyone switch? Now, this is not a sponsored video. I am not getting paid for this, and Wizards didn't get any control over what I say in this video. But obviously, the reason they offered this opportunity is so that Jeremy can talk up the new books. So of course, he's gonna say a bunch of really positive things. Not only is that his job, but he's one of the people who wrote this book, so naturally he's gonna think it's great. But my goal with this video is not to sell you on the new books. I didn't write them, I don't get paid when you buy them, I don't really care what you play. I just see a lot of people weighing this question right now, and I'm weighing this question right now. So I wanna use this opportunity to get more information and to share my own thoughts, to help us all make our own decisions. Oh, and of course to take my vengeance. First of all, do you have just like an elevator pitch? Why should people who already like 5e switch to the 2024 books?
The 2024 versions of the core rulebooks are basically everything you love about 5th edition, but enhanced. And not only have we gone through and tuned up the game, but even more importantly, we have added a bunch of new options in the form of new subclasses, new feats, new spells, a whole new approach to how you make your character, and on and on. All of these combined really make it 5e supercharged.
So what you like but better is the basic concept.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a sales pitch, of course. Why should you switch? Because it's better. This doesn't really tell us anything. But the goal of any new edition is to improve the game. And in this case, they're working from a decade's worth of feedback on what is and isn't working in 5th edition. Let's be honest here, the only people who criticize 5e more than Pathfinder players are 5e players. Most of us don't think this game is perfect. Now, whether or not these updates actually make the game better isn't something I can objectively speak to. I am not a game designer, and I'm not gonna pretend to be. I won't know if I think it's better until I play it, and play it a lot. But the people at Wizards are game designers, and they have played it a lot, so I'm willing to entertain the possibility that the updated game is better. God knows there's plenty of room for improvement. On the one hand, Jeremy is incentivized to talk up the new books, but on the other hand, he knows a lot more about the new books than I do. So while I am taking everything he says with a grain of salt, I'm not gonna discard it entirely. You don't design for Wizards of the Coast for 17 years without a pretty deep understanding of the game. I think a lot of people are wondering if this is not a full new edition, if this is just a sort of a polishing coat on 5e, is that gonna be worth the cost of buying a brand new book, or in the long term, a brand new set of 3 books?
I'm always really sympathetic when I see this because we're trying something new. These are completely redone core books. Not only have they been rewritten from front to back, you have more options than you ever had before. These are truly new versions of the core game. What's simply different from any time we've done this in the past is these new versions of the core books are compatible with the version of the game that came before them.
So the fact that it is not a new edition is less that it is not a new edition's worth of change, but more that you don't have to discard everything from 5e. You can still use those things.
Exactly. Because these core books are as redone as the core books were in 2014 or the core books were for 4th edition. Just the big difference is they were redone and redone to work with the game people are already playing. It was a huge challenge. In some ways, it would almost be easier to just start over. But we love 5e so much. The community loves it. In the end, I think what we've done, I'm really hoping will become a norm for the game.
One of the big points of contention with this update is the question of whether or not it is a new edition. From this, it sounds like it is actually a new edition. He says it's as much reworked as 4th edition was from 3rd or as 5th was from 4th. The reason they're not calling it a new edition isn't because the changes they made are insignificant, it's about the backwards compatibility. Basically, a new edition would have meant 5th edition is obsolete. So because it doesn't do that, it's not a new edition. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying that this choice to maintain backwards compatibility was made specifically so that D&D could keep profiting off of 5th edition material, or that it's a false promise made to pacify people who don't want to lose the library of content that they've been investing in for 10 years. Personally, I have a lot of 5e content I don't want to lose. Not to mention, I write content for 5e, so selfishly, I don't want all that stuff to be defunct. So if it really is backwards compatible, I think that's a good thing. But to be honest, when I first heard interviews about backwards compatibility, I did not feel great about it. It sounded like they were saying that it was technically possible to use 5e content, but that it wasn't recommended and that it was kind of complicated. Can you tell me a little more about how the backwards compatibility works between the two?
We've designed the new core books so that they are compatible with the adventures and supplements that you have already for 5th edition. You can take the new player's handbook, make a character, and you can have that character dive right into an adventure that was written before the 2024 book came out. So you could take a 2024 character and go right into The Wild Beyond the Witchlight or The Curse of Strahd. So the beauty for everyone is that if there's a subclass or a species or a feat or a spell or something else that has come out for 5th edition and does not appear in the 2024 Player's Handbook, you can use those older options with the 2024 Player's Handbook. It replaces only the things that appear in both the 2014 Player's Handbook and the 2024 Player's Handbook. So it's sort of like, if you have the old thing, the new thing replaces it. But if there's an old thing that's not in that Player's Handbook, you can keep using it. The book has guidance built in on how to take one of those elements that doesn't appear in the new book and use it with your new character.
So we have everything that we had before.
Exactly.
Okay, I feel like this is weirdly confusing to explain, but much more straightforward in practice than I initially thought. So let's get this nice and clear. Backwards compatible doesn't mean that you can use any old content along with any new content. It just means that you're not losing access to anything. If it's been redone for 2024, you use that one, and if it hasn't, you just keep using the old one. So when you build a barbarian, you're using the 2024 updated barbarian class. But if you want to use a 5th edition barbarian subclass that isn't in the new 2024 rulebook, you can. So you can use, say, the Path of the Beast barbarian from 5th edition with a 2024 barbarian. But if you want to play a Path of the Zealot barbarian, you'd use the updated Path of the Zealot, not the 2014 Path of the Zealot. I think it's also important to note that if you hate the new 2024 content, you don't have to use it either, even if your party is. Like, let's say you're one of the people who's really mad about the new Ranger class. You can play a 2014 Ranger in a 2024 game. And I know you had mentioned in another interview that you can play 2024 characters alongside 5e characters in the same party.
It absolutely will work. The main thing is it's best in that scenario that the game itself you're playing use the version of the rules from 2024, because the 2014 rules, since they were written over 10 years ago, of course, could not predict what we would do in 2024, but the 2024 rules can handle stuff from the past. So if you want a character built entirely using the version of a class or a species from 2014, run it as a 2024 game, and then that 2014 character can sort of wander in and be like, hi, I'm joining you all. That will work.
I think this is a nice option for people who really do have a lot of love for certain 5th edition character builds that were reworked for 2024 in a way that they don't like. But even though it's an option, it sounds like 2014 characters might be at a disadvantage in a party of 2024 characters.
Recently, Chris Perkins and I were playing 2014 5th edition, And as much fun as we were having, we kept like looking at our characters and we're like, well, we already are missing the 2024 elements that our characters have in all of our playtests for the new player's handbook. So again, it's like, you can do it. We wanted people to be able to do it because there are going to be people who are like, that's their bliss. And we always love to, serve as many people's sort of bliss version of D&D as possible. But we also suspect a lot of people are going to kind of have that experience that Chris Perkins and I had recently, where it's like, we're having fun, but I want that weapon mastery, or I want that new feature that's in that class.
So within the ecosystem of 5th edition content, we aren't losing anything. All we're doing is upgrading the player's handbook and then eventually the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual. Everything else we're free to keep using in conjunction with 2024 games. Of course, there will undoubtedly be some hiccups with this because they have changed some pretty significant parts of the character building mechanics. Jeremy assured me that anytime there's a clash between 2014 and 2024 content, the handbook includes guidance on how to navigate that. So if a D&D group is going to switch over to using the 2024 Player's Handbook, do you have any advice on how that group should handle that transition, what a Dungeon Master can do to make that easier on their players?
I think the easiest thing to do is just take your character and go through the levels of your class in the new Player's Handbook and then just make the changes on your character that you see there. You could keep your campaign running and just have the characters essentially transform into their 2024 versions and then just keep going. We've made sure that the spells that you expect to be there from 2014 are there in 2024. And the book, if there's any case where there might be a hiccup in the transition, the book addresses that. I also recommend that people just, as you have free time, please just sit down and enjoy paging through the book, because there are new things on every page of that book.
So if I were transitioning an ongoing 5th edition game to using the 2024 Player's Handbook, I think I'd set up a whole session that's just for that. So we'd all get together, we'd go through our character sheets and remake them with the new rules, and then maybe we'd run like a sparring session or a low stakes combat to give everybody a chance to try out the new versions of their characters. I think especially for some of the classes that have been heavily reworked, or for higher level play where you've gotten very used to your abilities, there will be an adjustment period with these new features. Can the 2024 Player's Handbook be used immediately, even before the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual for 2024 come out?
Yes. You can have that be your player's handbook and use it with the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide and Monster Manual. Now, my recommendation, though, is as the other new books become available, to switch over, partly so you can have the fun of seeing how tightly the three books are integrated in together. So you're going to see that they speak to each other really well. There are things sort of teed up in the Player's Handbook that the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual run with. So it will work with your older DMG and Monster Manual, but it's going to work even better with the new ones. Okay,
I know this is just him doing a little salesy hype for the other two upcoming books, but I'm not gonna lie, I am actually really excited about the prospect of a new Dungeon Master's Guide. Reworking the Player's Handbook mostly meant improving the individual player options, plus a few little quality of life improvements to the way the information is organized. The 2014 Player's Handbook had room for improvement, sure, but it's functional. But I'm gonna be real with you guys, I think the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide is really bad. It actually has a ton of useful information in it, but that information is very difficult to find. When I first started DMing, I did attempt to read it cover to cover, and it is simply not built for that. But that means there have been plenty of times that I have a problem and don't realize for a long time that the Dungeon Master's Guide has a solution for that problem. It's just buried somewhere in this disorganized mess of a book that almost nobody actually reads. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point is, you can start using the Player's Handbook immediately, even though it'll be a few months before the other two books come out. I'm not really sure why they're doing this staggered release. Maybe it's intentional so that we're not all trying to implement a ton of big changes at once, or maybe they're just straight up not done with the other books yet. Who knows? Well, I think that we're out of time, but it was really great to talk with you.
You too. Seeing you makes me think back to being in a castle together.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me.
Wait,
Jeremy! My vengeance. Overall, a lot of this was about what I expected. A lot of promises that the new book is great, basically just a PR appearance. But I will say, I had some concerns about backwards compatibility, and this interview did settle those for me. I feel a lot more confident now that I understand how to use 2014 and 2024 content together. But how that combination actually works in play is something I'll have to see for myself at the game table. Of course, I haven't played 2024 D&D yet. I've looked through it and I've seen a lot of stuff I like, but I'm not gonna know if I love it until I actually get to experience it at the table. I do plan on trying it, but it's easy for me to say that because they already sent me the PDF. I don't have to drop $50 on it. If you don't feel excited about the new player's handbook, then I would suggest you not buy it. That's an option available to all of us. That way you can wait to hear more about what people do and don't like about it once it's released. And if you do change your mind later and decide to switch, you'll have plenty of time to do that. They've been writing these new rulebooks for years, so I highly doubt they'll be updating them again anytime soon. Plus, they've confirmed that the 2024 basic rules are going to be placed in the Creative Commons just like 5e was. So by the end of the year, you should be able to try out the 2024 mechanics for free anyway. Now there's just one question left. What the heck are we supposed to call it? Wizards has been calling them the 2024 rulebooks. 6e doesn't really work since it's not a new edition. Some people are calling it 5.5, like 3.5, but the new SRD is referred to as 5.2. It's a mess. So here's my pitch. We use the Fast and the Furious naming convention. So first it was Dungeons and Dragons, and then there was 2 Dungeon, 2 Dragon, and then Dungeons and Dragons Greyhawk Drift, and so on and so forth, making this one Dungeons and Dragons 6. It's the only logical solution, really.